Welcome to the Improbability Engine. I'm Will Aubrey, and my buddy Joe Darnell's alongside here. Time for another edition of our podcast. And we start, as always, with our moment of what? And this week, my moment of what, for the first time in my life, I played Santa Claus. They asked me to play Santa Claus at church, and so I dressed up in a Santa Claus suit, and I really had a blast. And I would have the kids give me high fives, and even the little ones could pretty much do that. And the bigger ones would haul off and slap my hand really hard, which was cool, and I really enjoyed that. A lot of the kids wanted hoverboards, and I talked to a couple of grown-ups after that, and I told them that, and they thought that hoverboards really hovered. And I had to explain that no, we don't have that technology. They're powered by batteries. They have wheels, and they roll down the road.
And they might be the most dangerous thing ever invented.
And then, well, that plus, it's an excuse not to exercise. Right. I mean, my goodness, how did this take the place of bicycles? It's just the whole idea of hoverboards. I don't like it at all. One of the funnier moments, this one little boy, I asked him what he wanted, and he says, "I want a Santa suit." And then after that, he kept running around, "Where's my Santa suit? I want a Santa suit."
But that's good. Low expectations are good. That's how you do that.
There was a little girl who came up 3 times, and the last time she brought me a present. She brought me candy canes.
Aww.
Which I thought that was really sweet. But that's my moment of what this week.
My moment of what? Mine was more what? I believe, Will, you got to call a Laker basketball player scoring 40 points in a game. Did I read that right? 40
points in 3 quarters.
What?
Because he didn't play the fourth quarter.
I have to admit, I looked at that like 6 times, and I've seen some really great Laker performances. I really have. I've been very blessed with.
And by the way, the name's Camden Price.
Camden Price? Yeah, get that guy some ice. He's going to burn something down. That's a hot hand. 40 points in 3 quarters. And this isn't college basketball where there's a shot clock and you have to chuck it and go. This is the slow game. This is 1950s basketball, generally speaking. And he had 40 points in 3 quarters?
Yes.
Oh,
now,
goodness.
He hit 5 threes, but his 5th three gave him 24 points. He scored 16 points after that without hitting another 3. To his great frustration, he missed a wide-open layup, and he came over to the stage and took his hands and slammed his hands in frustration on the stage, because this was at Fulton County High School.
Right.
And we were doing the broadcast from the stage behind one of the baskets.
Okay.
Now, I've had that turn out very badly before because years ago doing that at Hickman County was on a fast break. Sean Stonecipher of Calloway was trailing the play, tapped the ball from behind, hit me in the face, and knocked my headset off.
You know what, though? You'll never get a better sound of being in the game. I have to give you credit. That's where the story's at. Now, give that young man some credit. That's pretty incredible. I saw that, and I thought it was a typo. And then I saw it again. I'm like, oh, my gosh, that kid's having a night.
Absolutely. Let's start with Murray State basketball. And the Racers, they had, I don't know, how can I put this? They got run off the floor at Evansville. That's really the only way to put it. And I never expected that. Evansville was like a 5 or 6 point favorite, according to the computer rankings. And I sort of expected Evansville would win the game.
Right.
But I never thought that they would just run Murray State out of the gym.
Well, the big thing from we can look at a lot of things. Poor performance by the Racers are right there at number 1. But tip your cap to Evansville. You want to talk about having a night. This is a team that only averaged how many three-pointers a game? 5 as a team per game? And they hit 15 or 20? I mean, some of that is aberration, but it's aberration that's kind of spurred along by poor play on the other side.
Well, they run a motion offense, similar to what Samford ran when Jimmy Collette was there. And going into it, Coach McMahon was concerned about his players' ability to guard them in that offense. And rightly so, as it turned out. I know Mick Cronin tried to play Samford man-to-man every time he played them up until the last time in 2006 in the OVC tournament, and he hadn't had much success against them, or not as much as he would have liked, and he played a 2-3 zone against them in the OVC tournament, and afterwards he said, I knew I wanted to play 2-3 zone against these guys.
Well, this is actually a really big topic amongst some of the Racer fans that I've been listening to, is the defense, and rightly so. The defense is horrible.
It has been bad.
Horrible.
Yes.
There is no other word you can look at it and say, oh no, that defense has been adequate. No, it's worse than adequate. Poor. It's worse than poor. It is horrible. It is as bad a defensive team at this point in the season as I've ever seen. And the big talk has always been, do you go and swap up into the zone? The thing that people don't realize is that we've gotten to this point in man-to-man with a summer and an early season playing man-to-man. You're not going to be able to just drop in a 2-3 zone right now and expect to have any kind of results.
Well, I asked Coach McMahon about the zone, and they have played a little zone at times this year. And he said the scary thing is their defensive efficiency has been worse when they've been in zone than it has been man-to-man. And that really shouldn't surprise people because they don't spend nearly as much time practicing zone as they do man-to-man.
Well, and the problem with zone as well is it puts a lot more pressure on your perimeter players. It just does, by its very nature. Now, it takes pressure off your post players, which is nice, generally speaking. But it puts more pressure on your perimeter players. And these are guys who are having trouble staying in front of their man when they know who their man is, not when they're guarding an area between two guys. You start skip passing or penetrate and kick out or getting inside the zone, and because some of these teams will. Belmont is a great example. Belmont is not the team you ever want to zone against. They're too good of shooting teams. They will shoot the lights out no matter what happens. So you can't zone that team. You just can't. You can't box in one. You can't do any of that stuff. There's a reason why they win as many games as they do. If
you were really good at playing a matchup zone, maybe you could do that against them, but you'd have to be really good against. You could not play a traditional static 2-3 or 3-2 zone.
Yeah, you couldn't even run a 1-2-2 or 1-2-2 running into a 3-2 because you can't pressure their ball handlers.
Right. It would have to be a matchup.
It would have to be a matchup. The problem is that people seem to think that it's just flipping a switch, and that's not the case. Do I think this team is as good as they're going to get playing defense? No, I don't. Do I expect this team to become one of the top 10 defensive teams in Racer history? No, I just don't see it. I don't see it right now. We got a bunch of guys who are immensely offensively skilled. Jonathan Stark, we've said it before, might be one of the best offensive players in at least the past 30 years of Racer history. He's fantastic. The game at Evansville notwithstanding. Doing great. Thanks. But that isn't enough. It isn't enough to just be good offensively to win games. So they're going to have to work on that. And they got a big game tonight going down to Oxford to play Ole Miss. I know there's at least one fan bus going down there. I think they had started a second. I hope that there's a good turnout. It's a good trip to take if you're a Racer fan. They're going to have to step up. They're going to have to step up. They've got to. There's no two ways about it because they played, was it Bethel?
Yes.
Bethel. They played Bethel as well. And in the first half,
did not play well. No.
They ended up winning the game by a large margin.
but it was like 13 at halftime and trending toward less than 13.
Right.
They didn't defend Bethel well at all. Bethel didn't shoot well when they got open shots.
Right.
So, and if you're not going to defend Bethel well, who are you going to defend well?
Well, and this is the big issue that they've got to work on, and I know for a fact the coaching staff is working on it. Just waiting for it to click. And at this point, it just hasn't. If they want to win games, it's going to have to click. It's going to have to. Now, I have been a little bit on the, you know what, this season, the early season stuff, it really doesn't matter. We've been the most inconsistent team that I can ever remember. Beat a great Illinois State team in the first game, and then lose by half a century to Evansville. You know what? We're just inconsistent, and that's not good enough. You got to be consistent. Even if you're not great, being consistent will win more games.
That's true. There's no question about that. I'm troubled by one thing. Actually, I'm troubled by more than one thing, but this is the thing I'm going to talk about right now.
Okay.
Evansville shut down Jonathan Stark, and nobody else was able to pick up the slack. And then against Bethel, Bethel didn't use any kind of trick defense to try and shut Jonathan down. Jonathan just didn't shoot the ball early in that game. He passed up open shots, and that bothered me a little bit. I'm just curious why he did that.
You know, I can understand that. I think my first thought with that is that in those situations you want to give another team film that doesn't show you shooting all the time, and so far he hasn't been able to do a whole lot of that. But I think also if you remember back to the first couple games that Cameron Payne played as a freshman, first game scores 23 points against Valpo on the road, takes
a million shots.
Yeah, a million shots. Second game doesn't take any shots, scores like no points.
Right.
And the big thing to learn there was neither one of those is the right answer. You know what I mean? For a lead guard that has a scoring ability, you've got to figure out the balance. You've got to figure out what the game is dictating to you. And I think that's part of the process. Jonathan Starks, he's a junior. He's a redshirt junior. He's far more physically mature than a Cameron Payne was his freshman year, obviously. But you got a bunch of guys who haven't played together, and they really have just now started to get a little bit of time under their belt together. Would I have hoped that it would have been faster? Absolutely. But I'm not overly surprised.
Now, there's a certain, perhaps, fringe element of Racer fans that are calling for Coach McMahon's head. And I don't think that makes a whole lot of sense.
Well,
I mean, number one, even if they were 0-10, the university couldn't afford to buy him out.
I look less from that point of view. I look at it like this. These are the same people. The reason why we're just now seeing them and why it's kind of surprising, the last coaching change we had was as seamless a coaching change as one could ever hope for.
You mean Kennedy to Prom?
Kennedy to Prom. That was as seamless as it gets. The talent didn't drop off. You didn't lose any players. And it still wasn't perfect.
Right.
I mean, it just wasn't. But these are the same people who called for Billy Kennedy's head.
That's true.
Everybody seems to forget that up until the year they go 31-2, Billy Kennedy was not adored by a lot of Racer fans. They said he played the game too slow. There wasn't enough offense. The talent wasn't there. He couldn't get guys in. He couldn't keep guys. He couldn't.
Here's my favorite stupid complaint from those years. They don't use screens. But the people who said that wouldn't recognize any screen if it wasn't a ball screen at the top of the key.
Right.
Because they ran stagger screens all over the place.
Absolutely.
It's just that these people didn't know enough about basketball to know a screen when they saw one.
Right. And this is the same problem we've got now, except on the opposite side. Well, Well, I think we've got to sit some of our guys. If there was a defensive stopper on this team, he would have been starting by now.
And there isn't one.
I
mean, people talk about Breon Sanchez' defense. At least some people that I talk to talk about him as a defensive player. But he doesn't block shots. The last time I looked, he had one blocked shot.
Yeah.
He tends to be a little slow-footed and is often a step late on defense.
Right.
And he hasn't been productive. The problem is, who do you play in his place? Now, you can look at Gilbert Thomas, and you can say, well, they could bring Gilbert in because he's had a good game here and a good game there. But he's had games where he completely disappears as well. I don't know that there's a legitimate option out there. Unless you go with G. McGee and put him at the 4 and put Terrell Miller at center, and Terrell's not a center.
Well, now you're playing an empty post.
Yes.
I don't care how you slice it. Here's the issue that you've got. With the graduation of Wayne Langston and the injury to Breon Sanchez, you don't have an established post player on this team. Period. End of sentence. That's it. We don't have one. And don't get me wrong, I think Miller is a very skilled player. I think he's got post moves to be successful. He is a junior college transfer who is a face-up forward who's in his first semester in D1. If you look at JUCO transfers, most of the time, their first semester is not good. And this is a guy that's being thrown way into the fire. I'm not gonna have judgment on it. I mean, you look at some of the posts we've got. Pearson Griffith is a great example. Pearson Griffith, he doesn't really make a huge impact until the second semester of his senior year. Now, Miller's not near the project Pearson Griffith was.
True.
But you still got to give this guy time. This is the second summer session. I expect to see some big things happen. Maybe not tonight, but before the start of conference play, I expect to see some changes.
Well, hopefully the Racers will play better tonight against Mississippi, and then they play at South Dakota State on Saturday.
Which is the harder of the two games.
Both of those games will be very difficult. South Dakota State's won like 70 games in a row at home.
Yeah.
It's going to be cold as all get out, and you don't want to get out. And so it's going to be difficult. But moving right along,
all right.
I want to talk about the University of Louisville Wake Forest situation in football.
Wakey leaks.
Now, evidently, a fellow who used to be an offensive coordinator at Wake Forest, who this past year and perhaps for a few years before that was the color guy for their football games on the radio, emailed some plays, not their game plan, some plays to one of the University of Louisville assistant football coaches. And somehow it has blown up into a huge scandal. People are accusing Bobby Petrino of lying when he said they did not get Wake Forest game plan. They didn't get Wake Forest game plan. They got a few plays. But the other thing that just puzzles me is this kind of thing used to go on all the time. The story of someone spying on another team's practice became a cliche in college football. Back in the 90s, after a game against the University of Florida, it had come out that one of Tennessee's former coaches had faxed Tennessee's plays to Florida. Okay, had faxed some of Tennessee's plays to Florida. Well, they asked Phil Fulmer about it, the Tennessee head coach, after the game against Florida where Tennessee lost, and Fulmer just laughed and said, "I've got Spurrier's entire playbook. One of his assistants who's disgruntled sent it to me." Yeah, that didn't turn out to be a huge scandal. My favorite story of that kind, 1949, Bobby Bowden's the quarterback at Samford, and they have this guy who's practicing with them during summer camp, who's there for a couple of weeks, and then suddenly he just disappears. And then they go play Tennessee Tech. And that guy's one of the Tennessee Tech coaches. Bowden says that guy had played at Tennessee Tech before he was a coach. We walked in, we saw his picture on the wall.
You know what, though, and you're right when you say that it's happened over and over again. And it happens at all levels to some extent. The big thing to remember is that, New England, before it was Deflategate, it was Spygate. They had, filmed other teams' practice. The Saints had tapped phones and put microphones in the press box. I mean, this is not new, and this is just what we know.
Right.
This isn't what we can think could happen or what might have happened. This is just what we know has happened. Personally, I think this is more of a Tom Jurek problem. He has handled this from a PR standpoint absolutely wrong.
What Tom Jurek shouldn't have issued any statement at all.
Well, statement should have been something that had some meat to it, that he had shown and done an investigation, and then you tell people what's going on.
Well, I wouldn't have even done that. I don't think he should have commented at all. And when they asked Petrino about it, Petrino should have, like Bill Belichick, on to LSU. I'm not commenting on it. You all write whatever you want. I don't care. That's the way that they should have handled it.
The problem with Petrino is he doesn't have any credibility.
That's true.
I mean, that's just his problem. He has no credibility whatsoever. And frankly, anything that comes up that has his name tagged to it is automatically going to get bigger than what you... And that's part of the problem here. Can he coach football? Absolutely. His track record proves that he is a damn good football coach. The problem is his track record in his personal life has bled over into his football career, and now they're inseparable. You can't get past it. Is he the first football coach to have a co-ed as his personal secretary riding his motorcycle? No, he's not.
Well, the big mistake he made at Arkansas was hiring her, putting her on the payroll. That's what I think got him fired as much as anything else. But all that's in the past. I think that, the Cardinals move on from here, and hopefully with Lamar Jackson winning the Heisman, that will help recruiting, and they can field another outstanding team next year. At least that's what I'm hoping. But moving along, before we get to Calloway County basketball, do you have anything else in general sports you want to talk about?
Not really. It's Hot Stove League in baseball, so you're watching these dominoes fall, and the Cardinals signed an outfielder from the Cubs, which is kind of funny since last season the Cubs signed an outfielder from the Cardinals, and Jason Hayward, paid him an obscene amount of money, and he turned around and hit .220 for the season. So it didn't stop them from winning their first World Series in a century, but it was something that some Cardinal fans took some solace in. So, some hot stove stuff going on. Professional football's moving on. The Giants beat Dallas. Dallas has been the story of the year. And
I don't like Dallas, so that made me happy.
In my fantasy football league, I was the number one team going into the playoffs, and in the first week of the playoffs was probably outscored 130 points to 50. So I am all but limping along to a third-place maximum finish.
Okay. We're sorry for you.
You know what? It's okay. It'll be all right.
Now, Laker sports. And, we talked about Camden Price in our moment of what. He's been having a great season for Callaway.
Absolutely.
He had that fabulous game against Fulton County. Callaway, the boys play again on Friday against Evangelical Christian over at Murray High. That game's at 6 o'clock. I don't know anything about Evangelical Christian, but I think that they will probably be better than CCA or Christian Fellowship around here. They're from Memphis.
ECS is a good program. Not a great program, but they're a Memphis basketball program. You'll have good players wherever you go. That's just what it's going to be. I think it's going to be a challenge. If the Lakers pull that win out, I think that's a feather in their cap. It's a tough game. No matter how you slice it. Those Memphis teams play a completely different style of basketball than the teams play around here. So it's going to be a challenge. I look forward to seeing what they have to put up against those guys. I'm really excited about that one.
Now, the Calloway girls are having a pretty good year, and I want to talk about one girl in particular here that does not get a lot of publicity, but what she did the other night against Graves County, I thought was awesome. Graves County has a girl named Lindy Qualls that is just very difficult to guard. She can take it to the basket, she can shoot threes, and the Lady Lakers couldn't find anybody that was able to guard her, in part because when you're taught to play defense in any level, man-to-man defense, one of the principles is that you help in certain situations,
right.
And also when the ball goes, when you're on the weak side, you back off a little bit, okay?
Right.
And you get that drilled into your head, and sometimes it's hard to overcome that.
Yeah.
Anyway, Qualls had like 18 points in the first half, and they put Brianna on her in the second half, and Brianna just face guarded her wherever she went, and did everything she could to make sure that Qualls didn't even get the ball.
Yeah.
And Qualls didn't score with Brianna on her, didn't even get to take a shot. And it was her being totally locked in on defense that allowed them to shut Qualls down. Now, Grace County went on to win the game by 11 points. But for the Lady Lakers at this point in the season, to be able to play Graves County with 11 points, and they're either the second best team in the region or maybe the best team in the region, depending on what happens with Murray's Maddie Waldrop.
Absolutely. And I think that's right. That's when you're looking at the top teams in the region, it's Murray and Graves. I think right now with Waldrop out, I think it's Graves then Murray, but I think there's a chance Murray can leapfrog Graves and be the number one team. I think that's absolutely the case.
Yeah. And then for third and fourth, it's Marshall and Calloway.
Right. It just so happens that both of those teams are in the same district. Those are tough games. They're going to be really tough games. But you're right. I think being able to put yourself up against a measuring stick game like against Graves County and to play as well as they did, the score's not indicative to how well they play. I really don't think so. I think that game was closer than 11 points. But it's basketball, and it's you miss a shot and they hit a shot, and it's 4-point swing right there before anything happens.
And they play extremely well. It's one of the best games I've seen them play in a couple of years. They led early against Graves County.
Yep.
They came out, they shot like almost 70% in the first half of that game, wound up over 60% for the game, and they just played about as well. They played as well as I've seen them play in a long time.
Right.
They just came up a little bit short.
Absolutely. And that just goes to show you what a team can do if they find the right pieces in the right moment. And
they didn't have Charlie Settle in that game.
Which is huge, because Charlie Settle's good for 11 points a game.
Right.
Without trying. On one leg, she's good for 11 points a game. She can flat play. That young lady has got a bright future ahead of her. She can play basketball. But you're right. That's a big deal to me. I mean, that's one of those you look at and you go, okay, we might have something here. I look forward to seeing how they progress going forward.
All right. Anything else?
Not on sports.
Okay. That brings to a close this episode of the Improbability Engine.